14 months after humanity's withdrawal, Ambassador Ji-won Park stood once again before an assembly of alien species. But this time the setting was different. This was not the Grand Council chamber on Axios Prime. This was a refugee processing station orbiting a dying world, where thousands of desperate beings sought shelter from the collapse of their civilization. She wore simple clothing now, not her formal diplomatic uniform. Behind her stood teams of human doctors, engineers, and aid workers. They had come not in glory but in service. Earth had made its decision. The provisional government that replaced the Galactic Council had sent a representative named Kelvas to meet her. His species were gentle beings, resembling tall plants with expressive faces made of petals. They had always treated humanity with respect, and they had suffered greatly in the collapse. Ambassador Park, Kelvas said quietly, I am grateful beyond words that Earth has reconsidered. Earth has not reconsidered, Ji-won corrected firmly. We have not forgotten why we left. We have not forgiven the dismissal and disrespect, but we are human, and that means we cannot watch billions die when we have the ability to help. So we are here, but we are here on our terms. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's conditions. The terms were clear and non-negotiable. Humanity would provide humanitarian aid, medical support, and infrastructure assistance. But the old Galactic Council was permanently dissolved. A new alliance structure would be formed with genuine equality among all species. Human technology would remain human property, shared only through fair agreements, and most importantly, respect would be required. We will not be taken for granted again, Ji-won said. We will not be dismissed as primitive. We will not sacrifice our interest for yours. We will be partners or we will be nothing. Which do you choose? Kelvas looked at the terms and then at his own people, dying in the refugee stations. He had no choice, but perhaps that was not entirely bad. The new terms were fair, fairer than the old council had ever been. We accept, completely and without reservation. Dr. Minji Choi arrived at a plague-stricken world called Helion 4 with a team of medical specialists. She had sworn she would never return to help the species that dismissed her research, but when she saw the bodies piled in the streets, her humanity overcame her anger. The medical facilities were overwhelmed, understaffed and running out of supplies. The local doctors looked at her with desperate hope mixed with shame. They remembered rejecting her proposals years ago. They remembered calling human medicine primitive. We have the cure, Minji announced, holding up a medical case. It will take 3 weeks to manufacture enough for your population. We will train your doctors to administer it. But I need full cooperation and resources. The chief medical officer, a being named Thren who looked like a crystalline spider, approached her hesitantly. Dr. Choi, I was one of those who dismissed your research at the council hearing. I called your methods unsophisticated. I was wrong, and my people have paid for my arrogance. I am sorry. Minji looked at him for a long moment. The apology did not erase the years of frustration, but it was something. Then help me save them. Work beside me, learn from me, and never dismiss someone's contributions because you think you know better. That is how you repay this debt. They worked together for 3 weeks, barely sleeping, pushing the medical facilities to their limits. Slowly, the death toll dropped. The plague was contained, then cured. Billions of lives were saved because one human doctor chose compassion over resentment. Engineer Suho Yoon returned to Gate Hub 7 with a team of technicians. The warp gate network was in terrible condition, barely functioning after months of neglect. He looked at the degraded systems and shook his head. This is going to take months to fix, he told his team, and we are going to train their engineers properly this time. No more letting them rely on us. They learn or the gates stay broken. He gathered the alien engineering staff and began teaching them. This time he did not simplify the explanations or hide the complex mathematics. He taught them everything, holding nothing back. Some struggled, but others proved surprisingly capable when actually given the chance to learn. You are not stupid, Suho told them during one training session. You were just never taught. The old council preferred keeping knowledge concentrated in human hands because it made them dependent on us. That was wrong. This time you will learn to maintain your own systems. Captain Daeun Kang returned to the frontier sectors with her peacekeeping force, but the mission had changed. Before, they had simply kept belligerents apart. Now she brought authority and consequences. She landed on a war-torn planet where 3 species had been fighting for months. Their leaders met her with suspicion and hostility. Captain Kang, One of them said. Have you come to stop us again? No, Dan said flatly. I have come to end this. You will negotiate a permanent peace treaty within 10 days, or all 3 of your species will be excluded from the new alliance. That means no medical aid, no technological support, no trade agreements. You will be alone in a galaxy that is still recovering. Your choice. The negotiations were contentious, but they happened. With real consequences on the table, the 3 species found ways to compromise. Treaties were signed, borders were agreed upon, and the war ended not because humans physically stopped it, but because humans made peace more valuable than conflict. On Waypoint Epsilon, Ambassador Yaren Bay coordinated with hundreds of worlds, managing the complex distribution of human aid and resources. She worked 18-hour days, running on coffee and determination. Former Counselor Thexrel, now disgraced and facing justice from his own people, requested a meeting with her. She agreed, curious about what the arrogant counselor had to say, now that his world was burning. They met in a private room and Thexrel looked diminished. His golden feathers were dull, his proud posture broken. Why? He asked simply. Why help us after everything we did to you? Yaren considered lying, giving him a diplomatic answer. But she decided he deserved honesty. Because we are human. We do not abandon people who need us even when they abandoned us first. That is not weakness. That is strength. It is what makes us different from you. We were fools, Thexrel said quietly. We had the greatest partners the galaxy had ever known, and we threw it away because of pride. Yes, you did. And thousands of your people died because of that pride. Mine included in those years when the Council ignored our warnings. So do not expect forgiveness, Thexrel, but you can expect us to save who we can because that is who we are. She left him sitting alone with his regrets. 5 years passed. The galaxy slowly rebuilt itself under the new alliance structure. It was called the Galactic Partnership, and it operated on principles of genuine equality. Every species had real representation. Decisions were made by consensus, not by the powerful imposing their will on the weak. And humanity, while respected and valued, did not dominate. They participated as partners. Some species never recovered from the collapse. 3 civilizations went extinct, despite humanity's best efforts. 7 others survived but would take generations to rebuild. The scars of the Council's arrogance would never fully heal. Ambassador G1 Park finally retired, her life's work complete. At her ceremony in New Geneva, representatives from dozens of species honored her. She stood before them, older now but still strong, and accepted their recognition with quiet grace. A young human diplomat named Hana approached her afterward, nervous and excited. Ambassador Park, I am about to take my first posting with the partnership. Do you have any advice? G1 smiled. Thinking back to that day, she walked out of the old council chamber, knowing the galaxy would fall apart but believing humanity had to choose dignity. Yes, remember that respect is earned, not given. It is not demanded through strength or granted out of pity. It comes from consistency, integrity, and the willingness to walk away when you are not valued. And if they stop valuing us again? Hana asked. Then we walk away again. But I do not think they will forget this lesson. Some lessons can only be learned through loss. And they lost nearly everything before they learned to appreciate what they had. G1 looked out at the assembled representatives, seeing genuine respect in their eyes now. The galaxy had changed because humanity chose to leave. It had nearly destroyed itself learning that lesson, but those who survived were better for it. On Earth, children studied the withdrawal as a defining moment in human history. The day humanity chose itself over gratitude from those who did not appreciate them. The day humanity walked away from power and came back only as partners, never as servants. In orbit above Earth, the massive defensive platforms remained, a reminder that humanity could protect itself. But they were joined now by research stations, trade hubs, and cultural centers where humans and aliens worked together as equals. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity had not. They had always known their worth. They just had to teach everyone else. Dr. Minji Choi stood in her laboratory on Helios 7, a research station that orbited a dying star. She had worked here for 12 years, developing treatments for diseases that affected species across the galaxy. The lab was filled with equipment, samples, and research notes that represented a lifetime of work. Now she was packing it all into storage containers. Her research partner, a being named Quillix who resembled a floating jellyfish, hovered near her workstation. His species communicated through color changes, and right now he was displaying deep blues and purples that his translator converted to words of distress. "You cannot leave now," Quilix said. "We are so close to finishing the cure for the pale plague. Another 6 months, perhaps 8, and we will save billions of lives." Minji carefully placed a data crystal into a foam-lined case. The crystal contained 17 years of research, much of it her own work. "I am leaving in 3 days, Quilix. Those are my orders from Earth. But the plague affects 17 different species." 17. How can you abandon them? She stopped packing and looked at her partner. They had worked well together, and she considered him a friend. That made this harder. 5 years ago, I presented preliminary findings to the Council. I asked for expanded funding and resources. Do you remember what they said? Quilix's colors shifted to gray, which meant he was uncomfortable. They said it was primitive human sentiment to prioritize disease research over economic projects. They called my life's work primitive, Minji said quietly. They cut my funding by 40%. The only reason this research continued was because Earth provided private funding. This is human research, using human methods and human resources. And now we are taking it home. But people are dying. People have been dying for 5 years while the Council ignored them. Maybe they will take it seriously now. She resumed packing, and Quilix said nothing more. The silence between them felt heavy with things unsaid. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of stations and facilities. Captain Kang commanded a human peacekeeping force in the frontier sectors, a region where 3 species had been locked in border disputes for decades. Human peacekeepers had maintained an uneasy peace for 40 years, standing between the warring sides and preventing escalation. Now Daeun stood on the bridge of her ship, watching as her troops packed up their equipment and prepared to leave. Below on the planet's surface, representatives from all 3 species had gathered to plead with her. "Captain Kang," one of them said through the communication channel, "if you leave, war will resume within weeks. Thousands will die." Daeun felt the weight of that statement, but her orders were clear. "Then I suggest you find a way to make peace. My people have stood between you for 40 years. We have bled for you, died for you. And when we asked the Council to provide permanent solutions, to force real negotiations, they said it was not their concern. They were happy to let humans do the work while they took the credit. You are condemning us to war." "No," Daeun said firmly. "You are condemning yourselves. Peace was always your responsibility. We just gave you time to figure that out. Apparently 40 years was not enough." She cut the communication and turned to her crew. "Prepare for departure. All personnel back to the ship within the hour." One of her officers, a young man named Quan, spoke up. "Captain, are we really just going to leave them?" "Do you want to stay?" Daeun asked. "No, ma'am. But it feels wrong." "Many things feel wrong," she said. "But we cannot force people to value us. We cannot make them respect our sacrifices. All we can do is control our own choices. And Earth has chosen to come home." The peacekeeping fleet departed, and within 2 weeks the first battles began. The reports reached the Council, but they were buried under other business. Engineer Suho Yoon had the most critical job of all. He was responsible for maintaining the Warp Gate network, the system of faster-than-light travel that connected the entire galaxy. Humans had not invented warp technology, but they had revolutionized it. Human engineers had taken a slow, expensive system and made it fast, efficient, and reliable. Suho stood in the control center of Gate Hub 7, looking at the massive holographic display that showed the entire network, 200 gates connecting thousands of worlds, and buried deep in the code of every single gate were human innovations that nobody else fully understood. His assistant, a Krillian named Vex, watched him work with growing concern. "You are really going to shut it down?" "Not shut it down," Suho corrected. "I am removing all human-designed components and modifications. The gates will still work. They will just work the way they did before humans got involved. But that means travel times will triple, maybe quadruple for some routes. Then perhaps someone should have appreciated what we built." Over the next 3 months, Suho and his team systematically removed human technology from the network. They worked carefully, making sure nothing was damaged. They left the basic systems intact, but all the improvements, all the innovations that had made the network efficient, all of that went with them. The Council received reports about the changes but did not understand the implications. They saw technical updates and system modifications, They did not realize they were watching their infrastructure decay. On Earth, Ambassador Jiwon Park had returned home to a celebration. Millions of humans were proud of their government's decision. Street parties filled the cities and orbital facilities displayed messages of support, but Jiwon felt no joy, only a quiet satisfaction that Earth had finally chosen dignity over desperation. She met with Prime Minister Taeyang-oh in the government complex in New Geneva. The Prime Minister was an older man, calm and thoughtful, who had authorized the withdrawal after years of debate. "The Council has sent us a message," he said, showing her a holographic display. "Chancellor Vormine says they are willing to forgive our tantrum if we return within the month." Jiwon read the message and felt her anger rising. Even now, even after everything, they saw this as a tantrum, a childish outburst that would be forgotten. "Send no reply," she said. "Nothing at all?" "Silence," Jiwon confirmed. "Let them wonder. Let them wait. And let them watch as their galaxy starts to fall apart." The Prime Minister nodded. "It has begun already. Trade agreements are expiring. Medical supply chains are breaking down. The frontier wars are escalating. How long do you think before they realize?" "Not long enough," Jiwon said. "They will realize too late after the damage is done. That is what arrogance costs." She left the meeting and walked through the gardens outside the complex. Earth had never looked more beautiful to her. The sky was blue, the air was clean, and for the first time in 200 years, humanity was focused on itself. No longer would they sacrifice their own development to help aliens who did not appreciate them. In orbit above Earth, construction crews worked on new projects. Defense platforms, research stations, and ships designed to human specifications without compromise. Earth was moving forward and the galaxy was moving backward. The separation had begun, and there would be no turning back. 9 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council existed in name only. What had once been a unified government spanning half the galaxy was now a collection of desperate species barely holding themselves together. 17 civilizations faced complete collapse. Food riots consumed city worlds. The Pale Plague had killed over 8 billion beings. And still the crisis deepened. Councillor Thexerol no longer sat in the council chamber. He had gathered what remained of his political power and formed something new. A military coalition of hardliners who believed humanity's withdrawal was not a retreat, but an act of war. In a command center on the fortress world of Carthan, he addressed his followers. "Humanity abandoned the galaxy in its darkest hour," he declared. His voice carried across dozens of screens to military commanders scattered through space. "They took our technology, sabotaged our infrastructure, and left us to die. This was not a peaceful departure. This was an attack, and it demands a military response." General Vexnor, a warrior from a species that prided itself on strength, nodded his approval. "My fleet stands ready. We have 600 warships. If we strike quickly at Earth's outer colonies, we can force them to negotiate." "They will not negotiate," someone warned. "The intelligence reports about their defensive capabilities are concerning." Thexral waved a wing dismissively. "Intelligence is cautious by nature. Humanity is strong, yes, but they are not gods. We have numbers. We have desperation. That makes us dangerous." The coalition voted and the decision was made. A fleet of 600 ships would travel to human space and demand assistance. If humanity refused, they would take what they needed by force. It was a plan born of panic, and anyone thinking clearly would have seen the disaster coming. But clarity was in short supply. On a neutral trading station called Waypoint Epsilon, Ambassador Yaren Bey watched the developments with growing concern. She was not an official ambassador anymore since Earth had withdrawn from the Council, but she remained as an observer, maintaining contacts and gathering information. She sat in a cafe that served species from across the galaxy, sipping tea while monitoring news feeds on her datapad. The reports were grim. Refugee ships filled with desperate families fleeing dying worlds, medical facilities shutting down for lack of supplies, governments falling as populations rioted. A former colleague, an alien named Cortex, sat down across from her uninvited. His species resembled armored bears and he looked exhausted. "Yaren, you must speak to your government. Tell them what is happening here. Surely Earth will help if they understand the true scope of the crisis." "Earth understands perfectly," Yaren said calmly. "We receive all the same reports you do. Then why do nothing?" Because it is not our responsibility anymore. You made that clear when you dismissed us, insulted us, and treated us like primitives for 2 centuries. Now you face the consequences. Cortex slammed a massive paw on the table, drawing attention from other patrons. My people are dying. My homeworld has lost 40% of its population to the plague. And you speak of consequences? Yaren met his eyes steadily. Yes, consequences. You relied on human medicine but refused to fund human research. You used human engineering but mocked human methods. You benefited from human peacekeeping but denied us any real authority. Every choice has a cost, Cortex. You are paying it now. You would let us all die? We are not killing you. Your own arrogance is killing you. There is a difference. Cortex left without another word, and Yaren returned to her monitoring. An hour later, she saw the report she had been expecting. Thexerol's coalition fleet was moving toward human space. She immediately sent an encrypted message to Earth's Defense Command. Coalition fleet inbound. 600 warships, possibly hostile intent. Estimated arrival in 72 hours. The response came quickly. Acknowledged. We are prepared. Captain Jiho-han commanded Earth's defensive fleet from the bridge of the battleship Indomitable. He was a veteran of 3 wars, calm under pressure and absolutely confident in his ships and crew. When the alert came about the approaching coalition fleet, he ordered his forces to intercept positions at the edge of human space. 50 human warships moved to meet 600 alien vessels. The numbers seemed impossible, but Jiho knew something the coalition did not. Humanity had not been idle during their centuries in the Council. While they contributed to galactic civilization, they had also prepared for the day they might stand alone. The human ships were smaller than most of the coalition vessels, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with weapon systems that had been developed in secret. Energy shields that could absorb tremendous damage, railguns that fired projectiles at relativistic speeds, missile systems with perfect accuracy, and AI-driven targeting that could track thousands of objects simultaneously. When the 2 fleets met, Jiho opened a communication channel to the coalition flagship. Thexerol's face appeared on the screen. His feathers bristled with anger and fear. Captain Han, Thexerol said, trying to sound authoritative. We have come to negotiate for humanitarian assistance. The Council has no authority here, Jiho interrupted. You are in human space without permission. Leave immediately. We will not leave until Earth agrees to provide aid. We are willing to use force if necessary. Jiho allowed himself a small smile. Are you? He gave a signal and the human fleet demonstrated their capabilities. They did not fire on the coalition ships. They simply showed what they could do. Every human vessel targeted multiple coalition ships simultaneously. Warning locks painted 600 vessels with enough firepower to turn them all into debris. The coalition's sensors screamed with alerts as they detected energy signatures far beyond what they had expected. You have 200 warheads targeting your flagship alone, Jiho said calmly. Each of my ships can destroy 10 of yours before you could get a single shot off. Your fleet would cease to exist in approximately 40 seconds. So I ask again, do you really want to use force? The coalition fleet hung in space, frozen by the sudden understanding of how outmatched they were. Thexerol stared at his tactical displays, seeing the impossible mathematics of the engagement. Every simulation his computers ran showed the same result. Total annihilation of the coalition fleet with 0 human losses. How? Thexerol whispered. How did you advance so far? 200 years of preparation, Jiho said. While we helped you, we also helped ourselves. We knew this day might come. We knew we might need to stand alone. So we prepared, and now you see the result. Will you destroy us? No. That would require me to care about you, and I do not. I will simply escort you out of human space. If you return uninvited, the next encounter will be different. Now turn your fleet around. The coalition fleet retreated, their grand plan shattered before a shot was fired. Back in the council chamber, Chancellor Vormine received the report and closed his eyes in despair. They could not force Earth to help. They could not threaten or cajole or manipulate. They could only beg, and humanity was not listening to beggars. Vormine was formally deposed 2 days later, replaced by a council of desperate species who had no better ideas. The government fractured further. Some species tried to copy human technology, but their attempts failed catastrophically. Human innovations were built on 2 centuries of gradual development, and you could not skip those steps. Yeren Bay watched it all from Waypoint Epsilon, sending daily reports to Earth. Her messages were brief and factual, but between the lines anyone could read the tragedy unfolding. The galaxy was dying, and the one civilization that could save it was choosing not to intervene. On Earth, the debate continued. Jiwan Park argued for limited humanitarian intervention. Others wanted to maintain complete isolation. And Prime Minister Taiyang-O faced the hardest decision of his career. How to save lives without sacrificing dignity. How to help without enabling the same attitudes that forced humanity to leave in the first place. 3 months after humanity's complete withdrawal, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The chamber that once hosted 47 species now felt smaller, darker. The holographic displays showed maps painted in red, marking crisis zones that spread like infection across the galaxy. High Chancellor Vormine had not slept well in weeks. His compound eyes moved frantically across the reports that flooded his console. The pale plague had spread to 23 species now, killing millions every day. Without Dr. Minji Choi's research, they had no cure and no timeline for developing one. Order, he called out, his voice struggling to be heard over the chaos. We must have order, but there was no order. Representatives shouted at each other, accusations flying across the chamber. The Krillian ambassador blamed the avians for economic collapse. The aquatic species accused the silicon-based life forms of hoarding resources. Everyone had someone to blame, and nobody had solutions. Councillor Thexeral stood, his golden feathers ruffled and dull. He had aged visibly in 3 months, his confident bearing replaced by barely controlled panic. We must send another delegation to Earth, a proper one this time with full diplomatic protocols and genuine offers of negotiation. We already sent 3 delegations, someone shouted back. They refused to meet with any of them. Then we send a 4th, Thexeral insisted. We cannot simply accept this situation. Chancellor Vormine pulled up new reports and the holographic display shifted to show the warp gate network. Travel between systems that once took days now took weeks. Trade that had been profitable was now barely sustainable. The entire economic foundation of the council was crumbling. The humans sabotaged us, another councillor declared. This is an act of war. They deliberately crippled our infrastructure. They took what was theirs, Vormine said quietly. We just never realized how much was theirs. On the frontier worlds, the wars that Captain Daeun Kang had prevented for 40 years now raged unchecked. Planets burned and billions fled their homes. The council had no peacekeepers to send. The few non-human forces they deployed were inadequate, and the conflict spread like wildfire. Medical facilities across the galaxy struggled without human pharmaceutical supplies. The humans had provided 70% of advanced medicines, using techniques nobody else had mastered. Now those supplies were gone, and people died from diseases that had been easily treatable just months ago. Agricultural worlds faced disaster. Human engineers had developed crop systems that could feed entire planets. Those systems were failing now and nobody knew how to fix them. Famines began on worlds that had not known hunger in generations. The council tried everything. They offered formal apologies that were never answered. They promised economic incentives to Earth corporations that had already closed their galactic offices. They threatened sanctions and embargoes, but Earth did not care. Humanity had closed its borders and focused inward. Finally, Chancellor Vormine authorized a full diplomatic delegation to Earth. 50 representatives from the major species, bringing gifts and concessions and desperate pleas. They traveled to Earth's solar system in a ship that took 3 times longer than it should have, due to the degraded warp network. When they arrived, Earth did not meet them with hostility. That might have been easier to accept. Instead, they were met with polite indifference. Junior diplomatic staff received them at a space station in Earth's outer system. Not Ambassador Jiwan Park, not Prime Minister Taeyang. Oh, but low-level officials whose names the council did not recognize. The delegation was given a tour of Earth's space infrastructure. They saw construction projects that dwarfed anything the council had built in decades. Massive defense platforms surrounded the system, equipped with weapons technology that made the council's fleets look primitive. Research stations buzzed with activity, developing innovations that would never be shared with the galaxy. They visited Earth itself, landing in New Geneva and walking through streets filled with humans who looked happy and prosperous. The cities gleamed with technology that seemed decades ahead of council standards. Every person they passed seemed confident, purposeful, focused on building something better. A young diplomat named Subin Ko met them in a government building. She was polite, professional, and utterly unmoved by their presence. The council delegates sat in a conference room that felt too small for their purpose, and they presented their case. Earth must understand the humanitarian crisis, the Krillian ambassador said. Billions are dying. Entire civilizations are at risk. We need human assistance. Subin listened politely and took notes. When they finished, she spoke without emotion. Earth withdrew legally and peacefully from the Galactic Council. We fulfilled all our contractual obligations. We owe the Council nothing. But the suffering, another delegate pleaded. Can humanity simply ignore that? Can the Council? Subin asked. You ignored it for 200 years. You ignored our warnings, our research, our recommendations. You called us primitive and dismissed our contributions. Now you want us to save you from the consequences of your own choices. We were wrong, Thexral said, and the admission seemed to physically pain him. We failed to appreciate humanity's value. But surely you will not let entire species die to prove a point. We are not proving a point, Subin said calmly. We are living our lives. Earth is thriving. Our people are happy. Our technology is advancing. We are doing exactly what we should do, taking care of ourselves. She stood, indicating the meeting was over. I will relay your message to Prime Minister O, but I would not expect a favorable response. Earth has moved on. The delegation was escorted back to their ship. As they left Earth's orbit, they passed the construction projects again. One of the delegates, a scientist, analyzed the defensive platforms with his equipment. What he found made his blood run cold. Those weapons, he whispered. They could destroy our entire fleet in minutes, all of it. Every ship the Council possesses. Humanity could crush us, another delegate said, but they are not even paying attention to us anymore. The ship returned to Council space, and the delegates delivered their report. The Council chamber fell silent as they described Earth's advancement, its power, its complete indifference to the galaxy's suffering. What do we do? Someone asked. We survive, Chancellor Vormine said heavily. We learn to function without humanity. We rebuild what we can. We adapt to what we must, and we accept that we destroyed the best partnership the galaxy ever had. And if they attack? Vormine looked at the reports of Earth's defensive capabilities. They will not attack. That would require them to care about us. And we made very sure they stopped caring. Back on Earth, Prime Minister Taeyang-o met with his advisors. Jiwon Park was there, along with military commanders, scientists, and economic experts. They reviewed the Council's delegation and discussed options. They are desperate, Admiral Narration said. The Council is collapsing faster than we projected. Some species may not survive. That is not our responsibility, another advisor said. But Jiwon Park looked troubled. Is it not? We are human. We do not abandon people in need even when they have wronged us. That is what makes us different. They would have abandoned us, someone pointed out. Yes, Jiwon agreed, and that is why we left. But now the question is not what they would do. It is what we will do. Are we going to watch billions die to prove we were right? Or are we going to find a third option? Prime Minister. O leaned back in his chair, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. What kind of option? One where we help but on our terms, where we save lives but never forget why we left, where we rebuild relationships but never accept being undervalued again. The room fell silent as they considered her words. The decision they made would shape humanity's future and the galaxy's fate. The Council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure that orbited the neutral world of Axios Prime. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien civilizations sat in their designated seats, their various forms creating a strange tapestry of galactic life. Some had wings, others had scales, and many possessed features that defied human description. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Jiwon Park, wearing the formal blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. She looked calm, but her hands gripped the edge of the speaking platform just a little too tight. Behind her, holographic displays showed 200 years of human history with the Galactic Council. Images of human engineers building space stations, human doctors treating alien diseases, human soldiers keeping peace on distant worlds. All of it would soon mean nothing. Members of the Galactic Council, Jiwan began, her voice clear and steady. I stand before you today to deliver a formal notice. Humanity is withdrawing its membership from this council effective immediately. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species chirped, others roared, and a few simply buzzed with what might have been laughter. Councillor Thexril, a tall being covered in golden feathers, stood up from his seat. His species had been part of the council for over 1,000 years, and he carried that history like a crown. Ambassador Park, he said, and his translator gave his words a mocking tone. Surely Earth does not mean this. Where would humanity be without the council's guidance? You are still so young, so primitive in many ways. Jiwan's jaw tightened, but her expression remained neutral. She had expected this. She had warned Earth's government that the council would not take them seriously. 2 centuries of service, of blood and sweat and innovation, and still they were seen as children playing at galactic politics. Earth's decision is final, she replied. We have submitted all necessary documentation. Our withdrawal follows every legal protocol established by the council itself. High Chancellor Vormine leaned forward in his seat. His species looked like massive insects, with multiple eyes that reflected the chamber's lights. He had led the council for 30 years and considered himself a fair leader. But even he could not hide his dismissive attitude. Let us be honest, Ambassador. This is about the Outer Rim crisis, is it not? Earth feels overlooked because we chose the Krillian strategy over your proposal. The Krillian strategy, Jiwan said quietly, resulted in the deaths of 3 million colonists. The human proposal would have saved them. But no, this is not about one decision. This is about 200 years of being ignored, dismissed and treated as inferior despite our contributions. She touched her tablet, and the holographic displays changed. New images appeared showing human technology that kept the warp gates running. Human medicine that had cured 17 different alien plagues. Human peacekeepers who had stopped 4 major wars. The evidence was overwhelming, but she could see in their eyes that they did not care. Commander Hyun Lee stood behind Jiwon, his military uniform crisp and formal. He was her security attaché, but he was also her friend. They had served together for 20 years. He watched the council members with hard eyes, memorizing every dismissive gesture and mocking expression. The council has 3 months to prepare for our full departure, Jiwon continued. All human personnel will be withdrawn from joint projects. All human-maintained systems will be shut down properly. We will honor our contracts to the letter, but once they expire, they will not be renewed. You cannot be serious, another counselor shouted. You would abandon your obligations to the galaxy? We have no obligations, Jiwan said, and now her voice carried an edge. We have been partners, volunteers, contributors, but you have made it clear, again and again, that you do not value what we offer, so we are taking it home. Thexrel laughed, and others joined him. Let them go, he said loudly. Let them sulk in their little corner of space. They need us far more than we need them. In a year, maybe 2, they will come crawling back begging to be readmitted. Jiwan said nothing. She simply placed her tablet on the speaking platform and turned to leave. Hyun Lee followed her, along with the rest of the human delegation. Their footsteps echoed in the chamber as they walked toward the exit. Ambassador Park, Chancellor Vormine called out. Surely we can discuss this. There is no need for such drama. She paused at the doorway and looked back. There is no drama, Chancellor. There is only a decision, made after careful thought and much patience. Earth wishes the Council well. We hope you find what you need without us. Then she was gone, and the massive doors closed behind her. The walk to the docking bay felt endless. Other humans who worked at the Council facility joined them along the way, all carrying their personal belongings. They had been given advance notice and they were ready. Some looked sad, others angry, but all of them walked with their heads high. The human ships waited in the docking bay, sleek vessels marked with Earth's symbols. Jiwan boarded the flagship and went directly to her quarters. Only when the door sealed behind her did she allow herself to feel the weight of what had just happened. She removed her ceremonial jacket and sat on the edge of her bed. Her hands were shaking now. 200 years of history ended in one afternoon. She had delivered the speech perfectly, maintained her composure, represented Earth with dignity. But the cost of that control was catching up to her. A knock at the door. Come in, she said, and Hyun Lee entered. The ships are ready, he reported. All personnel are aboard. We can depart whenever you give the order. Do you think we made the right choice? She asked quietly. Hyun Lee considered the question. He was a soldier, not a diplomat, but he had seen enough to form his own opinions. I think we tried for 200 years to be equals and they never let us. I think we gave them every chance to see our worth. And I think they will realize their mistake. When? Jiwon asked. Soon, he said. Very soon. And by then, it will be too late. She stood and straightened her uniform. Then let's go home. The human fleet departed from Axios Prime, their engines leaving brief trails of light in the darkness. Inside the council chamber, the representatives were already dismissing the event, already moving on to other business. They did not watch the ships leave. They did not consider what those ships were taking with them. Earth was going home, and the galaxy would soon learn what that truly meant.